this like kind of catalogs the graphic journey with like Quincy, Quigg, Parillo, Draplin, Parillo, Ryno, Parillo. Thank you guys.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure, and I felt like it was just yesterday that I was riding the Blue Girl.
It was just yesterday.
Where did it all begin? I mean, look, getting to ride for LIB was, it was a dream come true. Growing up, being such a fan of snowboard culture, and I remember a good buddy of mine, Eric Rislin, who I grew up with. The first like board I was able to buy with my hard-earned bucks, we actually pooled our money and bought the Jamie Lynn like wheat board. We would go like a week on, week off, sharing the board through winter. And so, you know, years later, you know, being able to come out and work it out and get on with the LIB team, it was a dream come true. And so, you know, it takes a while to build a board, and part of our, you know, deal was they were going to give me my own board from the start, which was incredible. Coming on to LIB, the epic part was like year one, right? Because it takes at least a year to build and develop a board. Year one, I got to ride Jamie Lynn's Blue Girl. I remember being like at the X Games, you know, riding like X Games pipe with this, you know, Blue Girl bass, and being able to just like roll down into the corral and just like, you know, take my board off and flex on like national TV. It was amazing. I had a lot of fun with that board. Meanwhile, I got introduced to Quincy Quigg, who is an incredible artist out of the Northwest that had worked and done a bunch of projects with LIB.
DIY till I die. And I'm out. 206.
And started riffing with, you know, Quincy on a board graphic and what we wanted to do. And so kind of just, after like a bunch of conversations, you know, and kind of current events, you know, it was, I believe it was right around, you know, like the Saddam Hussein weapons of mass destruction, that whole like shit show of false information. And like on the news at the time, everything was like WMD, weapons of mass destruction. And I believe there was also an election, and it was like Republicans, Democrats, Republicans, WMDs. You know, the news was just so like ridiculous. And so we came up with the Donkafint, which was a elephant-faced donkey firing WMDs out of his ass. You know, we got some like Northwest, freaking peeling waves, salmon jumping on the coast. Just a damn fun graphic. And I think it turned out incredible. We actually did a black and white one too, but we only made like a couple of those. So if anyone out there has the black and white OG Quincy Quigg, you know, first pro model of mine, this board ripped. This is a super fun way to start the 20-year journey, which, dude, if I would have known that I had the opportunity to do 20 years of this at this point, this was a lot of fun. I'd always been a huge fan of Mike Parillo and some of the like legendary works he created, leading creative at Volcom. He was one of the original park builders. You know, this guy was like, he was a elusive legend, and that was the like, hey, if I could have any artist do a board, like it would be incredible to work with this guy and whatever. Long story short, you know, we kind of came up with this concept that, you know, later was a painting that Parillo did called Blessings and Confrontations and the Circus Contradiction, which it's a wormhole. You want to get in the metaphorical, you know, levels of that. But bottom line, you know, everything in here has certain elements that we talk to, or, you know, Parillo's, you know, long depth, you know, fan of Japan. We got the like Yakuza pinky, the dichotomy. A big theme of this board really was kind of like anarchy, kind of going against the grain, anarchy in all directions. And so, you know, Mikey kind of came up with this logo, which actually like 10 years later, Parillo and I ended up getting together and forming A Symbol. And we actually took the A Symbol logo, lifted it from this kind of original logo that was in this piece. Anyway, super fun graphic. I got to ride this board, I think the first year filming for That's It, That's All. For the third round, you know, Aaron Draplin, if you've never heard of this individual, he's I would say, design powerhouse, someone who's very considered, has worked with a number of brands in snowboarding from the beginning. Incredible designer. I mean, he's designing stuff for like national parks and, you know, presidential races, Fortune 500 companies at this point. You know, this board basically was built from kind of just like scraping the news media for like sound bites. The thing that you would just hear all day, every day on the news. And a lot of it was around like, yeah, the Iraq war and I guess the hilarity of the news media. And so with Draplin, we made all these little buttons, right? And every button, these little like iconography buttons or little phrases. And it was kind of a snapshot of the social norm, kind of what was happening that year. I just invited Mikey to come down to New Zealand. You know, Parillo loves to shred. Like Parillo's he's a barrel-chested badass shredder. So he came down, you know, brought all his paints. And so Mikey's literally just standing at his easel, like looking out the window. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And just like paints in the full lunar eclipsing blood moon. The painting itself is a kind of combination of, we were shooting these amazing like aerial scenics while we were shooting, that's all. It was kind of the first time that I think any one of us had ever gotten our hands on the tools, like real planet Earth style cinema work. Mount Cook, which is like the center of the South Island of New Zealand, and then, you know, it's West Coast, East Coast, polluted lung, you know, talking a lot about just as well, like the California coast compared to some of these like remote, beautiful coasts in New Zealand. Really enjoyed making this graphic. Ryno crushed it. I was super pumped with the art. Like the originals of these are super beautiful. And, you know, trying to be light as a feather whenever you're out there. I had such a good season. We were hitting a lot of jumps. I mean, you gotta remember back then, you know, there was no Orca, there was no like other boards. I had one board that I was, you know, riding Aaron style, X Games, US Open, jibbing on and riding backcountry. And this was actually, I think, the first year that we had like built the C2 or like started to put banana in between the foot, rocker in between the feet. From year one, I had the magnet traction, and over the years we kind of refined magnet traction, but this was year one for bringing in that kind of C2 profile, you know, camber in the tip and tail, banana between the feet, and that being a big year of just like breakthroughs in, you know, being able to just lean a little more forward, stomp and powder. I've kept a similar, we've modified it a number of times, but pretty much kept a similar base profile ever since. This is one of my favorite graphics that I did with Mikey. You know, the theme of this was you are what you eat, buy local, eat organic. However, each one of those was in a fast food sign. And you know, the couple other, you know, pieces of this one, obviously, you know, we got the Disney font, just making fun of the giant corporation. I think there was also like reference back to, you know, for Parillo, some riots in LA. There's two ladies on either side, and then this kid who is kind of taking in what he's being told. He watches a lot of TV. You know, Parillo was very into all of these like chemical compounds and the molecular makeup of certain chemicals. So that continued to become a theme. And then this year also was year of full total solar eclipse. And so you have like totality. And this goes back to each one of the years there was a solar, or I would say astral body in each one of them. And you had the lunar eclipsing one that we saw in New Zealand together. And then this was the full total solar eclipse. I think this is also, this was the first year that we started Art of Flight, and I got to ride this graphic up in Alaska. So the whole like opening Alaska scene was riding these boards. Year 7, I think this was right about the same time that I actually started a symbol with Mike Parillo. And so we were working together, and so it felt great to do another graphic with him. We'd had a lot of success with the graphics. And this graphic was kind of spurred, this was the last year of working on Art of Flight, and I think we had a lot of conversations over this time period around just, you know, the philosophical questions around, you know, are we just made up of chemistry? What influences our actions in reactions? You know, is it literally just a, you know, we're a bag of hormones and you know, dopamine and the way that we react to certain situations and make decisions? Is it all just chemical based, or is there, you know, something, I'd say, a little bit further beyond the veil that influences our actions? And so Parillo was on a full like chemical composition from like hormones to dopamines to like synthetic human-made substances that also potentially influence one's actions. I think I might have also had some very bright, colorful outerwear during the making of Art of Flight. So there's a lot of expressiveness happening. Let's see, year 8, there's a really cool artist, Carl Smith, got to know over the years, amazing gallerist down in LA and Laguna Beach. He was also an agent representing a lot of artists and was working with Parillo at the time. Carl Smith did this amazing collage, and then we would print out this huge collage, digital collage, and there were several of these. Like the original paintings of these are like actually really incredible. So there's these big collage pieces, and then Mikey would paint over them and paint in all these elements and kind of bring it all together. And so it was a cool, you know, process of working with two different artists. You know, Carl taking the lead on like the collage and layout, and then Mikey coming in and overpainting and really like tying the whole pieces together. And yeah, it was a big year for me. I think I got National Geographic's Adventure of the Year award, which I got mailed a letter. It's pretty exciting. All right, guys, here's the plan. We're gonna go middle of winter up to high latitudes, and we're gonna go out and hike these gnarly, like wind-battered outer islands. And we're gonna be on a metal boat in the middle of nowhere. There's no help, no backup. And you know, it's these huge like volcanic islands. We ended up not sailing the Aleutians. But I go into that tangent because, you know, I told Andrew Schultz this whole story of like where we're going to be out riding, and we did still go and ride these areas. You know, this was kind of Andrew Schultz's take on like our trip with these like volcanic islands, and he painted this incredible like sailing ship with all of his like styles. The original is like, I don't know, it's probably like 8 feet wide, 5 feet tall. It's like incredible masterpiece. He put in a number of these elements into this painting. So I have this painting. I ended up, you know, buying it from him, and it's an epic painting. Andrew Schultz is a G. How do we make these boards that we're creating like more unique? And so I linked up with Jeff Peters, who, you know, to this day, for me, the most mind-blown like freehand artist. I chatted with him about this goal that I had, that I presented this whole concept to LIB around, hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna create 2 pieces, right? We were going to write an algorithm, ready to like hire software engineer and write this so that every time they hit print, it would randomize and reprint out a custom board. And we kind of got to the finish line, and it was a little bit of a like, wait, you actually wanna do that? I don't know if we have the bandwidth to write a computer program to output a custom board for every board that we make. And so that was kind of one of those like heartbreakers. You know, we got to the finish line, didn't really get to fully realize the vision, but the graphic was awesome. So we went from 5,000 unique graphics to 6. Bit of a compromise. But actually, we should revisit that next year. Let's go back to the original for every single print concept. I'm getting a call. What was that? Coming in 27. Year 11, we went back to tried and true, my buddy Parillo. This year, the concept was super creatures. And basically it was a straight mashup. All of the incredible animals on this planet, we kind of went to this like collage super creature, like really bringing in this like Gaiac energy. And Parillo did this incredible series where, you know, he'd mash up these animals into super creatures. I think he freaking nailed it. You know, when you start like going in and like looking at the dynamic elements of all these weird species, I mean, the fact there's still animal, you know, I'm an animal nerd, and still see new creatures I never knew of even exist on this planet. And so that Super Creatures year was an epic. I really like these graphics. All right, year 12, the Baker's Dozen Pro Model. I had become aware of an artist named Adam Friedman. He did these like really complicated paintings that I was a huge fan of. I ended up getting him a few kind of landscape elements from up in Alaska, and I'd been working on, I think at the time, the 4th Phase book. It's kind of like my little project along with that film. And so he ended up just doing these like cool kind of dimensional planes, and I love the way that those graphics turned out. We did, I think, like 5 or 6 different graphics in the end for the different sizes, and I don't know, Adam killed those graphics. Beautiful board line that year. Year 13, I did a little collab with Mike Parillo again, and he had been working on these kind of contained little shapes of like color and form. And, you know, you saw them in person, they're really beautiful. And I think that year we had been working on a film project that was taking a ton of bandwidth, and luckily Mikey had some time. I think we were super late on graphics that year, and Mikey got us a couple cool, you know, kind of compositions of a project he had been working on, and it was a fun year. But, you know, we got it done, got on timeline, and yeah, Mike Parillo comes through again. I have a couple buddies in Jackson who are incredible. The Dunstans, Wade and Mark. Wade Dunstan, incredible videographer, filmmaker, worked with a lot, and his brother Mark, incredible artist. And going into that year, I don't know, I think there'd been I'd spent a lot of time in Wyoming that year, and there was, I don't know, we kind of wanted to touch on this theme of like the pioneers of the West. He did a piece that I thought was awesome. I really liked this year's graphic. I definitely remember the reps from Europe did not at all like that board. And I think it was like, well, tough. I think, you know, I like the T.Rice Pro graphic. I really enjoyed the graphic personally, but I think the amazing, or the best thing that came out of it was the first year Orca that he did. All right, year 15. So, you know, rolling into this, like I had a pretty substantial line of boards and wanted to work with single artists to do the whole thing. And, you know, I had the Orca, had the Gold Member, had, you know, T.Rice Pro split board, and had like a youth board as well, T-Ripper. And so, you know, I'd been familiar with an artist named Kim Krans, right, who had this pretty amazing kind of thing that she had built called the Wild Unknown. She's such a pro. She's such an incredible artist, amazing philosopher. And the line that we ended up putting together for that year, I think of all of the years I've ever done it, I think that was probably the strongest, like, cohesive line of boards that I think we've ever done. She did an incredible job. Like, each one of the graphics was so strong in its own right, and really the way that, you know, the kind of printing technology that LibTech uses, the whole thing came together. You know, coming off the work done with Kim, ended up going back working with Parillo because it's such a joy to work with. And we kind of further evolved the kind of wisdom and courage of accepting the weapon or tool. And so Parillo took it kind of one step further. It's kind of DNA component, wisdom, sword, all powerful. And then also played around a lot with just the theme of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder and vision or true sight. yeah, I mean, this graphic popped. I think Parillo did an amazing job with it. We had 2 graphics that year. So going into this T.Rice Pro graphic, you know, being able to work with Parillo a lot, you know, this one was, we were starting to get out there. We're talking multidimensionality, you know, what is it to live a fully conscious life and existence? Exploration into DNA, holographic vision. You've got, you know, the nervous system and what does it mean to have fully activated DNA. I think, you know, you kind of go on and on. We went down some fun wormholes. It had a lot to do about the vision and consciousness. Yeah, I thought the graphic on this turned out pretty badass. All right, rolling in. Schoph, if you haven't heard of Schoph, he's an incredible artist based over in UK. I don't know, I got to meet him in person. He's done so many amazing projects, collaborates a lot with Jamie Lynn, you know, Modern Incarnation, works on, you know, 1910 and a few other projects. But Schoph, just such a legendary individual and amazing guy. The year before, I worked with Parillo on a Benevolent alien board. Since that, I've done one of the boards in the line, and it's kind of shifted back and forth between Orca T.Rice Pro. But each year I do one Benevolent alien board. And this was the second one, and so in talking with Schoph, you know, that's what this whole thing's about. Our journey here, and how I believe that we are very much supported galactically in our ascension. And so super fun board to put together. I thought Schoph completely nailed it, and I have the original of this, and the original is freaking phenomenal. I don't know how they gave this guy the ability to just kind of go off on like a full conspiracy theory tangent wormhole. What does it look like, the magnetic field around a Gravitic's engine? How are these saucers flying? How is it that these things hover, make right turns, don't have to deal with the physics limitations that we currently have? And so this was essentially Parillo painting what you would actually see with the magnetic field of a Gravitic drive, high spun Mercury of a UFO, UAP, I guess these days. This particular saucer craft was lifted from a pretty amazing book called Light Years. The book's written about the guys that were hired to disprove it. They ended up writing a book basically saying like, shit's pretty legit. And so that's from a photo that Edward Muir took. What do you know? So this graphic and working with Adam Dryden came about because a friend of mine, artist who lives in Jackson, who I got to know, I asked her to do my Orca line. And that took a lot of bandwidth that she kind of suggested, hey, like let's hit up Adam and give him a stab at this. And so, you know, in trying to continue the Benevolent Alien board series that I've had done, we kind of put this whole theme together. A lot of symbolism in this, you know, from just, I guess, current events, from like, oh, Tic Tac to the TR3B, which is supposedly a recreation vehicle that we have, you know, elements from Pleiadian star system up here on the nose. I thought that he really nailed this graphic. A lot of elements within this, but the graphic as a whole, like Adam, I don't know, killed this graphic. I really enjoyed this T.Rice Pro. I thought the base too was heavy metal. Okay, what are we gonna do for a 20th year board, right? And, you know, being able to hit on all the incredible art that we've done in the past, you know, we talked about how to like put that all together, but pretty complicated. And if you like bring a collage, right, of all of these different amazing, unique works together, like chances are, you know, 19 different graphics with different styles and palettes, color palettes, like it's hard to get that to come together. And so I reached out to, you know, one of my favorite graphic artists who work with a lot, does a lot of graphic stuff for us, Natural Selection Tour, been in the industry forever, Toby Grubb. and he's got a company called This. Incredibly skilled and talented individual. We figured the best way, potentially, because snakes inevitably, inherently are, so many different, patterns and colors, and be such a beautiful animal. And so we figured maybe the most natural way to do it was to, put this in a linear form from, the original, my first Quincy Quigg Pro model on the tip of the tail, and it running through this kind of awesome art journey that I've been lucky enough to be on over the last 20 years of being able to influence pro model graphics. And I think Toby, end of the day, like, knocked it out of the park. It ended up, I think, turning into maybe one of my favorite graphics of all time. And last fall I got to come out, and Poss was kind enough to help me print out a small one of these, and for my son Jupiter made a 90, his first snowboard. Got to build him one with this graphic. 20th year. So we're here at the LibTech Dream Factory, and we're about to build for my little man Jupe. This is going to be his first snowboard, and we're doing a little bit of a custom layup here, but this is going to be the coolest board I've probably ever made.